this to me expressed what I was trying to write. It said what we need is a way to tap the power of a revival of faith in order to inspire and encourage the secular social reforms that are espoused in all the great religions. And so this is what we're talking about, how the revival of faith can make social change possible, but in movements that really are open to more than just people of faith. And the Baptist meeting was really encouraging to me, because here we're Baptists saying what unifies us is following after Jesus Christ, who calls us to serve the poor. I mean, it's amazing how the least of these are becoming a unifying place for Christians across the political spectrum.
And I know this is not a political meeting, but I was busy all day yesterday, and I got up early this morning and watched Obama's speech on the race issue, and the race issue has shaped my life. I grew up in Southwest Georgia during the segregation years, during the Great Depression, and at that time, the law of the land, the Constitution of the United States as interpreted by the Supreme Court, all the laws that were passed by Congress, the general conception of religious faith in this country, almost without exception, the consensus of great lawyers was that separate but equal should prevail. And that's the way I grew up. I lived in a little community called Archery, just 2.5 miles west of Plains, Georgia. I didn't have any white neighbors. All my playmates, all my companions were black people. And when I was a child, I didn't know the difference. There was no difference. I fought and argued and played ball and made toys and worked in the field and went hunting and fishing with my black friends on a completely equal basis. When we got ready to go to Americas to the movie, we would catch a train together. The train stopped in Archery. That was the only reason for its purpose, to be in assistance to the community. And my black friends would go to the colored section, I would go to the white section of the train. And we'd ride 10 miles, cost 15 cents. And we'd get off the train in separate parts of the train. We'd go together, hold hands, a black and white boy, walk down the street to the movie. When we got to the theater, I would go to the front and sit in the comfortable seats downstairs. And my friends, A.D. and Johnny and Milton, would go to the back of the theater, go up to the 3rd floor, and could barely see the screen. And then we'd get together and we got back. That was the way it was. And I thought that the speech yesterday was, I think it was historic. If you haven't seen it, you might call it up on the internet. Regardless of that's what we try to overcome things like that that have separated us for so long. And we have a possibility now, as Jim has so wisely identified, it gives us a chance to overcome those past prejudices and differences and separations and disparities under the overall aegis of the teachings of Christ, which, as Julia Coleman says, provide us with the principles that never change. We have changing times, but there are certain principles and moral values of God that never change. I think Jim has really enwrapped that concept beautifully in his book.
You know, my experience in Detroit, in my little evangelical church, I got to be about 14 and I began to ask, why do we live the way we do in white Detroit when life is so different in black Detroit, just a few blocks away? And they said I was too young to ask these kind of questions. When I got older, I'd understand it's always been that way. One elder said, he told me, if you keep asking these questions, you're going to get into trouble. That proved to be true. I went into the city and I met the black church, and they took in this teenage kid full of questions, this white kid. And I learned an awful lot. I came back, and an elder one night said, Jim, you have to understand, Christianity has nothing to do with racism. That's political, and our faith is personal. 14 years old. I think that's the night that I left in my head, in my heart. I was gone in a couple of years. I didn't have words to put around that then, but I do now. And the words are in this book. God is personal, but never private. Personal, but never private. And I spent all day defending my friend Barack Obama. I've known him for 10 years. I was in CBS and CNN, and it's amazing the level. Let me just say, and this is not endorsing Canada. This is about the country more than a campaign. The level of, let me just say, white denial in this nation, not understanding how different the experience is of other people, and that it does lead sometimes to anger and to things that...
And fear.
And fear. But that speech, I agree with you, it was, what I said last night at CNN was, every American should watch this speech and watch it with your children. And ask if this is the vision of America you want for your children. And ask them what they think. I think this is not about, you know, a pastor in Chicago and what he said or didn't say. It's about the kind of vision, as he said so well, that might form a more perfect union. We have a chance here. Before the speech, the issue was about him. After, I think it's about us.
And he pointed out last night in just one phrase that still the most segregated area in this country is in churches on Sunday. That's why it was so important that the Baptists used to have what they call a triennial convention in Philadelphia every 3 years. This was in the early stages of the 1800s. And in 1845, the Southern Baptists separated from the rest of the Baptists because of a race issue. And our meeting in Atlanta, the last day of January, last 2 days of January, was the first time in 160 years, 163 years to be exact, that there was no difference at all. It was a beautiful opportunity. And we hope to build on that in many ways. And as I prepared to follow the answer to the questions of the 15 or 20,000 people who came, where do we go now? I went home and reread Jim's book and I took notes from it because he does point out the areas where Christians and other faiths, Christians can build on the opportunities. By the way, I just had my eyes dilated about a half hour because I'm married.
You know, Barack Obama does represent a new generation. And I was just saying before you came on this book tour, the new generation story was a story of the book tour. Everywhere we went, there were no chairs at seminaries and colleges, and even Grace Episcopal Cathedral in San Francisco paper sale. An unusually young crowd at the cathedral yesterday. And I think there's a new generation that wants to turn the page, and that's what he's trying to do. And a lot of folks, white and black, in the old generation kind of don't think we could ever really make a change. And he's saying it's time to believe that change is possible.
And he also says that if we don't change it on this election year, then 4 years from now we're going to be facing the same thing, even in worse condition. Good luck. You're going to be signing books, I hope?
Yeah, we'll be signing some books. Yes.
All right.
I hope pleasure to be here.
I hope you sign a lot of them. Thank you. I'm going to got another appointment, but if I can help you in the way you let me know.
I will. Thank you.
And good luck to you. I'm proud of you.
It's good.